UFC 249 on May the 9th, Ferguson versus Gaethje is stacked with a bunch of great fights, but there are some fights that are going to fall underneath the radar. I'm going to tell you the names of those fights, and I'm going to give them the spotlight on this show. These are my fighters to look out for at UFC 249. Both of them feature on the early prelims, and both of them are going to get a little bit overlooked because of how stacked this card is, because they are very talented contenders on their way up to the rankings in their respective divisions. And I'm going to start first with Thugnasty Bryce Mitchell. He's the co-main event of the early prelims, which is kind of just the second fight of the night. But co-main event of the early prelims makes it sound way more important. So I'm going to call it the co-main event of the early prelims. Bryce Mitchell versus Charles Rosa. What I like about this matchup is it isn't just an easy win for Bryce Mitchell whatsoever. They've actually given him a tough matchup here. Charles Rosa is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Rickson Gracie. Like, he's no slouch on the ground, and Bryce Mitchell's a submission specialist. They haven't done him any favours here, but I still believe that Bryce Mitchell's going to pull through in that matchup against Charles Rosa. It's a dangerous one. Charles Rosa is a savage. He's been in there with some of the best. I'm talking the likes of Dennis Siver. I'm joking. Not Dennis Siver. Dennis Siver beat him, but, you know, he's not obviously the best. But Shane Burgos. He had a great fight with Shane Burgos, and I know Shane Burgos kind of beat the shit out of him, but Charles Rosa, to be credited, he stayed on the feet with Shane Burgos pretty much for the fight, and in that third round, he held a beating before it was stopped, and he even went out on his feet. He's a tough guy with a great chin, so that even makes me question the stand-up ability of Bryce Mitchell in this fight. However, I feel as though, and I've said this a million times before, there's a level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it doesn't matter that Bryce Mitchell is a brown belt. It's how you apply it in the cage. Cub Swanson is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He got mounted and crushed by a guillotine from Max Holloway, who was nowhere near that level, and still is not near that level. I don't care about the belts sometimes in MMA grappling whatsoever, because Shane Burgos was able to escape the ground exchanges with Charles Rosa. Many other guys were able to escape the ground exchanges with Charles Rosa as well. And Manny Bermudez, as much as I like Manny Bermudez, he was kind of lingering in that armbar position a little bit too much. I know Manny Bermudez calls himself the Bermudez Triangle, and he likes to be the jiu-jitsu guy, but Jesus Christ, Manny Bermudez, he left his arm in that submission for far too long. And I'm not talking about it was the armbar that was in. I mean, he just had his arm dangling out there, and he had no care in the world about what Charles Rosa was going to do about it. And then after the fight, Manny Bermudez says, "I'm not ready for the UFC, I'm going to go away and train." I'm just saying it was a little bit weird, but Manny Bermudez lost focus, and Charles Rosa snapped up an armbar real good. And credit to Charles Rosa, he's a dangerous fighter. He also went to a decision with Kyle Bochniak, and I'm saying this again, if Kyle Bochniak can stay out of your submissions, I think Bryce Mitchell can. I think Bryce Mitchell's going to have a lot of fun in this fight. He's a bit smaller, he's a bit shorter. The UFC schedule said he was a bit taller than Charles Rosa. However, he's a lot stronger at the weight class. And recently, he went on The Ultimate Fighter. And usually when guys go on The Ultimate Fighter, they go down a weight class when they join the UFC because they want to fight guys their own size. Bryce Mitchell stayed at the weight class. He stayed at featherweight. Okay, and he just bulked himself up into that division. So when he first came into the UFC, he was a little bit scrawny. He was a little bit small for the division. I think it took some a bit of a reality check, like, oh shit, these guys are way bigger than me. Bobby Moffett is a big guy for the weight class. These guys are way bigger than me. There's going to be some problems. He had a close fight with Bobby Moffett that could have arguably gone either way, but he got the decision win. Bobby Moffitt's a guy who had a split decision with Raoni Barcelos, which shows you how good Bobby Moffett is. But either way, Thugnasty beat him in a similar fashion that Raoni Barcelos did, and I really credit Raoni Barcelos. I think he's an amazing fighter, and he's ranked right now at featherweight as well, I do believe. However, great performance from Thugnasty. Bryce Mitchell, I think I'm expecting a great performance from him. Again, he had the great performance, as I just said, against those other guys that he's fought, Bobby Moffett being one of them. It was a good win. He also had a big win against a man named, and I'll find it real quick, Tyler Diamond, who was 9-0 in the Ultimate Fighter finale. He had the majority win there, but he also lost to Brad Katona, but he stays undefeated, so who cares? At the end of the day, who does care? You know? I don't really care. He's still undefeated to me, and I'd like to see that because that's a really good promotion tool. If someone is undefeated, they have a very good chance of going to the top and going there very quickly. Ask Israel Adesanya and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Well, Khabib didn't get there quickly, but he eventually ended up there anyway. An undefeated fighter is a very good sign. I will always root for them. I think he's going to win this fight. I've seen Charles Rosa outclassed a few too many times, and I haven't seen as many holes exposed in Bryce Mitchell's game. Is this the fight that there's going to be holes exposed? Who knows? Is Kevin Lee going to be in Charles Rosa's corner to expose those holes? Who knows? There are a lot of questions we have to ask here. Bryce Mitchell is an absolute talent, though. From Arkansas, small town. He's got a bit of a following already for himself since he went on Theo Von's show and also got that twister finish. That went viral. Everyone heard about that one. Everyone knows him in the MMA hardcore circle now, I'm sure. He's on everyone's radar. Bryce Mitchell, I think, could be a superstar at featherweight. And I think if he wins this one, I don't like the matchup anyway between him and Charles Rosa. I think it's stupid. Bryce Mitchell's on a streak. Charles Rosa's 1-1 over and over again in his career. A 50-50 UFC fighter. I don't think it makes too much sense. I would much rather have seen Bryce Mitchell versus Hakeem Dawodu. However, they went with this one, and if Bryce Mitchell does win this one, Hakeem Dawodu, as far as I'm aware, has expressed no interest in fighting during the pandemic, which means he's going to be fighting afterwards at UFC Saskatoon, which is being rebooked, I think, once this is all over. And I would love to see Bryce Mitchell versus Hakeem Dawodu on that card. I think that would be amazing. Hakeem Dawodu's a talent on a streak. Bryce Mitchell, if he wins this one, will be a talent on a streak. And I think he is going to win this one. And I think he's going to win it by decision, just by controlling positions and pushing the pace of the fight. I don't think he's going to get a finish over Manny Bermudez. I don't think he's going to get it whatsoever. I don't think he'll get it by submission, definitely. And I don't think he'll get it by KO either, because as much as I like Bryce Mitchell, he ain't the level of stand-up as Shane Burgos. You know, Shane Burgos had a tough time KOing fucking Charles Rosa. Charles Rosa has a very good chin, and maybe he took a bit too much of a beating against Shane Burgos, and that might alter the effects of his career. But he's coming off a big win. I just think that Bryce Mitchell is aware enough in the jiu-jitsu department not to get submitted, and I think that's the only way that Charles Rosa is going to be able to win, because he does a lot of his work off his back, and I think just being on top and staying out of bad positions and applying some ground and pound where necessary is going to lead Bryce Mitchell to get a not very amazing and not too exhilarating, but a clear-cut decision win over Charles Rosa, and I'm looking forward to it. Another man on the card. My next fighter to look out for is Ryan Superman Spann. I like Ryan Spann. I've been paying attention to him for a long time, actually before he even got into the UFC, because I know he was fighting some guys like Trevin Giles. Outside of the UFC, he lost to him by split decision, which really does kind of annoy me a little bit. But, you know, Ryan Spann's a lot of improving recently. Since his loss to Carl Roberson on the Contender Series, where he got KO'd by an elbow, he started fighting actual light heavyweights, and he started winning, because as we all know, apparently, guys from lower weight classes are just better than the upper weight class. That's just how things work. Cejudo moves up, McGregor moves up. At first, he was better than the other guys. At first, we know Khabib came along eventually, and size does mean something. But in a usual situation, the guys that move up tend to have a little bit of success. Carl Roberson did against Ryan Spann. So did Trevin Giles, and he had a lot of losses. And at one point in his career, he was, I don't even remember. Let me see this right here. He had 4 losses in 6 fights. Tough hit to his record, because before those, he was coming in at 7-1 on his record. So it was a nice little ruining of a record, a situation that he was in between 2013 or 2017. Like, his whole 2017 year and 2016 was just an absolute mess that destroyed his record permanently for life, which I'm not a big fan of. But other than that, when he got through some of those losses, he came out, he fought some decent guys. He fought a guy who was 5-2 when he was 10-5, beat him by rear naked choke in the first round. He beat a guy who was 15-6 when he was 11-5, beat him by TKO in the first round, ground and pound. He fought a guy who was 10-4 when he was 12-5. These are good guys to face. They're not quite UFC level guys, but either way, they're tough opponents with similar based records. He beat him by TKO punches in the first round. Then he submitted a guy, Emiliano Sordi, who was 16-6, another good record, submitted him in the first round. And then he gets to the UFC, demolishes Luis Enrique in his demolishes the guy Sordi in his Dana White's Contender Series fight. Then he destroys the guy Luis Enrique and just kind of pieces him apart for 3 rounds. Shows a little bit of tiredness. He was supposed to fight Jimmy Crute after that as well. That one got cancelled. But then he just completely annihilates Glass Chin Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, which kind of put him on the map for a lot of guys, because that uppercut was very lethal, and especially those follow-up shots afterwards. They weren't quite necessary, but either way, I was a fan of them because it was fucking brutal. Ryan Spann's on everyone's radar right now, and I think he's going to beat Sam Alvey, because Sam Alvey's no fucking slouch of an opponent. He's a very tough competitor, and Sam Alvey, if you're not quite good enough, you're talking about a guy who has a split decision win over Rashad Evans here. I know it doesn't mean much now, but at the time when Rashad Evans was looking for elsewhere to go and looking to bounce back fights with Sam Alvey, they didn't quite go his way, and Sam Alvey's a tough competitor. He's had good wins throughout his career. He's got KO power. He's tough as they come. I just think Ryan Spann's a little bit too powerful, and I don't think old man Sam is going to be able to survive the onslaught in the first round from Ryan Spann, because Ryan Spann in his last fight against Devin Clark proved a lot to me. A lot of guys look at Devin Clark, and I'm noticing this a lot more with time. A lot of guys do not credit Devin Clark. What Devin Clark is the gatekeeper of all gatekeepers. And I know a lot of people use that term and it's a bad thing, but Devin Clark is a very good estimation on how good you are as a fighter, because if you can just about get past him, you're the likes of Alexander Rakic, you're the likes of Ryan Spann, you're the likes of Jan Blachowicz, who got past him as well with that rear naked choke in the first round. You join a very specific group of people, okay, when you beat Devin Clark. But when you lose to Devin Clark, you're the Darko Stojic, you know, you're the Daquan Townsend. Like, he's a very good mid-ground on guys who aren't quite ready for the UFC. And if they beat him, they're ready for the UFC, and they tend to fly and skyrocket towards those rankings. However, I think that Ryan Spann's going to get a big win over Sam Alvey. I was very impressed with his win over Devin Clark, because Devin Clark came to fight there as well. He was pushing the pace, he was coming forward. Eventually, Ryan Spann was patient enough to find his opening and crack him with a right hand and finish him. I like Ryan Spann. I think he's going to win his fight. He's a heavy favourite as well, so I think he's safe money. I wouldn't actually bet on him because there's not a lot to make. And Sam Alvey can crack because it's the light heavyweight division and anything can happen. And Ryan Spann's been KO'd before. However, Ryan Spann is a monster. I like this guy. And I think he's going to get a big win, a big KO win in the first round to open up the whole card. With these two fights, however, I like that there's a stacked early prelims of a pay-per-view and they've put Luque versus Price as headliners, so people are going to tune into them. I understand that fully. I just wish that they were somewhere else, because early prelims for Ryan Spann and the next fight on the card for Bryce Mitchell, I feel like they could be co-main events of these upcoming two fight nights that are between the week. Like this Smith versus Teixeira. I don't even know who the co-main event is for that card. Let me find out real quick, because it's actually kind of embarrassing, because I think they have Gadelia versus Angela Hill as one of the co-main events, and I just don't understand why they would do it. But even this one, Ben Rothwell versus Ovin St. Preux. I'd much rather watch Ryan Spann get an opportunity in the co-main event, but you know what? It's all good. I thought these two guys could maybe bump up some of those other cards and bring in some actual young guns who haven't really built themselves a streak in the UFC yet to open up the card on UFC 249. But you know what? They've given them the spotlight on 249. I'm okay with it. People are going to tune in for sure. Ryan Spann's going to win by first round KO, and Bryce Mitchell is going to win by a bit of a lackluster decision against Charles Rosa, where he stays out of submissions, controls on top, and does just enough to win. I don't think he's going to finish Charles Rosa, however. But I think both of them have bright futures. I think both of them are guys to look out for at UFC 249. That's why they're on this video. And I didn't want to make a full prediction video for each of them because, you know, I can only do so many prediction videos. But Jesus Christ, these guys deserve some clout because they're tough guys. They really are. Ryan Spann could be the future of the light heavyweight division. And I think if Ryan Spann wins this fight against Sam Alvey, as I said, Bryce Mitchell should fight Hakeem Dawodu. Ryan Spann should take on another streaking contender, Magomed Ankalaev. Ion Kutalaba's looking for a fight very soon. He's not looking to wait around for Ankalaev in September when Ramadan is over and he can get a full camp in. Ryan Spann, if you win this one, you're going to want some time off as well. You and Ankalaev's schedules are maybe going to combine. And I would love to see Ryan Spann versus Magomed Ankalaev at the end of the year. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Hopefully both of those guys win because they're best for the promotion and they could really get behind them. See you later. Click that button there. Goodbye. Thugnasty and Ryan Spann. They're monsters, so watch out for them. You know?